So I was playing this game against Mikael Agopov, very nice guy. Himself, he is international master, not really a chess professional, just for him as a hobby. And after the game, we had a very nice talk about, career, how it started. That, for example, I got involved with chess, and he told about his work. So not all of us we have the same goals. It was very interesting to hear how it is to be from his perspective. And anyway, we played this game. E4, C5. Hello, Kept. Hello. I was playing with white, as you obviously can see, trying to play some Najdorf setups, and d6. Long story short, d6 has been for many years one of the most popular continuations for black. I mean, probably it predates to. Not sure with who to start. Maybe Bobby Fischer was one of the most fierce Najdorf players, obviously Garry Kasparov, and usually people play d4, c takes, knight e4, knight f6, knight c3, a6, and then this is where the theory actually starts. Hello, Digital Hobo. Hello. So Fischer was playing bishop c4, Kasparov was playing bishop e2. I'm not sure about bishop g5. Maybe he was as well. So there was this quite a famous battle, Kasparov against Karpov. Karpov was usually playing the Scheveningen structures in their World Championship matches. But anyway, d6, the Najdorf has evolved ever since. And I would like to believe that I was always slightly a step ahead. I'm not like complimenting myself, but my belief is that why should you play d4 here in the Najdorf if the knight is going to be developed for the second time? Right? And then after knight f6, knight c3, a6, white is trying to, has been trying every single possible legal move. And I'm talking about bishop e2, d3, c4, bishop e3, g5, f3, f4, g3, h3, h4, rook g1, a3, a4, bishop d2, queen f3, queen e2, queen d3. I mean, every single legal move has been played here. I mean, I'm not joking. I think even b4 has been tested here. It just makes no sense. It's sort of like a joke that people have been researching the possibilities here for white, and I just don't get it. I mean, my philosophy ever since when I started to research chess, I just didn't get it. Why do you do this? And it was something like, I don't remember, maybe 4 years ago, when I decided to investigate bishop b5. Because the idea is very simple, right? I want to castle, I want to play c3, d4, and fight for the center. And this is such a logical choice that I started to investigate it. And you know where it led me? It led me to creation of one of my very first theoretical courses. So those of you who have been following what I'm doing, I think it was 2018 when I wrote my very first commercial database for modern chess, and I called it the first part of the trilogy as the anti-Sicilian approach. And I was specifically advocating bishop b5. This was my pretty much first project to do something theoretical. And ever since, I've written 3 more databases for modern chess. I'm about to finish, by the way, my second Chessable course. Today, by the way, I was recording the final theoretical chapter video. It's done. So all that's left is some short and sweet introductions, peek insights, etc. But everything is done. So the course is done, pretty much. So I'm going to be so super excited to see when it's going to be released end of March. I can't wait. Anyway, long story short, now you know why I started to play this bishop b5. Thank you, Screws. Thank you for the sub. Appreciate that. Thank you for being around. And the story here is that black can play bishop d7, knight e7, and knight c6. To explain it in a simple language, knight e7 is the aggressive move, and I believe this is how black should play. Knight c6 is dubious for reasons I think you would have to see one of my boot camps. I'm pretty sure I did already this anti-Sicilian approach for white. And this bishop d7 has ever since been the weapon how to try to equalize with black. And after bishop d7, I remember a long time ago, my choice was short castle when I was making my very first steps in the opening. Knight c6, c3, knight f6, queen e2, e6, d4, takes, here. And I was playing this and playing over and over. And this was, I recommend aggression over equalization. Well, here's the thing, screws. I'm not sure that black equalizes. That's why I think aggressive approach has to be. I mean, if you play the Najdorf, you have to play aggressive. That's my belief, right? Otherwise, why do you play Najdorf? To equalize? Then play e5, right? Don't play Najdorf. That's how I treat chess, really. And so this is what I was playing many years ago. So what changed? Changed my understanding how to treat it. And ever since, I've been experimenting a lot of things. I've been experimenting with a4, been experimenting with take and short castle, rook e1, c3, d4, many setups. But when I was creating this course for the modern chess, I came up with this idea. I mean, it's not my idea, but I researched that the Maroczy Bind against the Najdorf, this bishop d7 and queen d7, is the most annoying system. And I tell you honestly, and this is exactly what I told my opponent, I'm waiting for somebody who is finally going to show me how black equalizes, because I haven't seen it. You know, I've played many games against even very strong grandmasters, and what I've been pretty sure after quite a while, there's just no simple way for black to equalize. So that's why it's like a challenge for me every single time. I've been playing the system for, I don't know, hundreds of times, online, classical games, over the board, etc. And every single time I'm just waiting for this moment when black is going to show me what's the perfect setup here to get an equal position. Anyway, so knight f6, seemingly black has to play, knight c3. There's a couple of systems that black can play. e6, he can close the action in the center with e5, and then apply something else. But g6, this is, if you would open some kind of a program like ChessSpace, it would advocate g6 is the way to go. So I'm going to play d4, c takes, knight e4, bishop g7, and here's the first trick. Black does not play knight c6. And why? This is quite important. Because if we are going to, for example, start with f3 seems to be necessary. Otherwise, any bishop e3 are going to jump under knight g4. And for such open positions, we desperately need our ducks for bishop. Something like queen d2, this is a strategic disaster. You don't want to do this, because now black's bishop on g7 is uncontested. So that's why white usually plays either f3 or h3 in order to play bishop e3 and secure the bishops on e3 well-being, which on the addition defends the knight on d4. But here's the thing. If white plays f3 and is not careful and plays short castle, there's quite a very nice way for black immediately to equalize just because he hasn't played knight c6, which is rook c8, attacking the pawn on c4, and after b3, d5. So this is very nice. And now knight e5 is a terrible mistake, because white loses something, takes, and something is dropping. Knight c6 is incoming, or rook d8. Yeah, I think it was rook d8. And then something was d4 is hanging. So after d5, c takes is impossible. The knight on c3 is under attack. So it's only e takes on d5. Knight e5. It looks very fun, but all of this has been already tested many times. e6. Now the knight cannot retreat because the knight on d4 is under attack. Bishop h6. Very nice shot. Black cannot take it. There's a fork. Take it. And this leads to a draw. Pretty much by force. And there's a number of ways how you can get it there. The simplest one, I think, it's knight b5, knight e6, knight b7. And if all of the both of the players perfectly know this opening, this leads by force to this position. And if you open the database, it has been played many, many times. So short castle here would be like a hidden draw offer for white. I mean, if I'm playing at a competitive level and I don't really want to play, or like I don't mind a draw, I can make the expression, it's like I'm fighting, but both of us, we know where this leads. Anyway, of course I want to fight. So, for example, that's why here f3 and bishop e3 is the most accurate move orders, because if I start with the obvious castle, now I have problems. Because f3 is going to be rook c8, bishop e3 is going to be knight g4, and anything else, it's just not the same. Maybe I could play something like queen e2 or b3, I'm not sure, but this is not the same. I don't get to set up the position which I want. Now you know why black doesn't play knight c6 and why white starts with f3 and bishop e3. So the entire idea is to be just in time to meet black's rook c8 with b3. And this is actually what he played, and it's not very accurate. So what I think he could have done, he should have been playing knight c6. Knight c6, short castle. And here, I've been having many, many games online. You probably wouldn't believe how many. I'm talking about dozens of games. Every single time I'm playing against somebody who's playing Najdorf with black, all of them play the same. I mean, some minor details change, but it's always the same. Black brutally tries to push d5. It just doesn't work like that. So white plays queen d2, rook d8, rook d1, and maybe there's some kind of inclusions of rook c8, b3, or a6, whatever. Doesn't matter. Black usually pushes d5. Otherwise, why did you create this weakness on d6 if you're not ready to push d5, right? d5, c takes. Black has no choice. Knight c6. Black has no choice. Otherwise, queen c6 just drops the pawn on d5 for no good reason. e5. We are going past the pawn. Knight e8 and f4. And this is solidly better for white, because white has a better control of the central squares. These are weaknesses. Think about ideas, maybe, I don't know, maybe knight e4, knight c5, bishop d4, or after f6, black can get very aggressive and moves like maybe knight e4, takes, and organize quite an unpleasant attack at the king side. Let's say this, and bishop g5, and black needs to be very resourceful to hold this. The king is very weak, right? So something like rook b8, knight c5. Okay, maybe this is not the most accurate way, but you get the point. This king is always going to be a prime target. So that's the story, and I've been getting this line over and over and over every single time, especially playing online, and I just have ever since double-checked it. It just doesn't equalize for black. It's just not how you play, but yet everybody keeps pushing for this line. So there is an alternative choice if black goes for this system and he plays a6. This is probably the smartest. So black wants to take on d4 and push b5. And one of the theoretical choices here, the main choices here for white, which I reject, is a4 ever since. And my motto about this position is that I don't really like it, because black has two knights on the board, so he's gonna play moves like e6, whatever I'm doing here, I don't know, let's say rook c1, queen c7, or maybe rook d8, queen d2, queen c7, king h1, knight e6. I just want to put this position. And I think it's very easy to misplay this. At least that's my belief. Because black has two very active knights, and any moment knight c6, b takes on c6, you really need to be sure that you can take on c6, and then you already regret including the a4 move. So my understanding as far as it goes to this position is I don't mind playing a4, but only with those knights being traded. So if I could play, let's say, after a6, and somehow force him to take with the queen and be able to play a4, let's say something like this, then he doesn't have these dynamics against my queen side. And I'm stopping b5 for good. And e6, d5 also is not going to work. But it's, of course, easier said than done. So I believe this is all about how do you properly stop the b5 push, and I still remember in the database I recommended this very weird move queen d3, which at the time when I wrote the database it was very rare move. There's something like a couple of moves being played. So if you open the database right now, the top choice is a4, the second move is queen d3. So I would like to think that it was also some part of my contribution to the opening theory here. So the idea is try to provoke black to play knight e5, rook c8, b5. Now seemingly the knight on c3 is under attack, but white's position holds together and gets better chances because of the fork on b6. And this is just better for white. Or the other rook, rook f8, it does not matter. And if black doesn't play this knight e5, he does something else, then I'm looking for this opportunity at some point to take on c6 and still switch to the a4 system. Anyway, all of this maybe is irrelevant, but now you know the backstory. When I entered this position, I was trying to remember what did I write in that database. So he played rook c8, clearly mixing it up. I think so, at least mixing it up with a system. After short castle f3, you remember, right? Once again, short castle f3, rook c8, b3 and d5. I showed you this position and it works for black. But here's the trick: with f3, bishop e3, rook c8 is not a good move, because I play b3 and now there's no d5. And I've been getting such games as well online, because after a simple e takes on d5, there's no sacrifice, because this knight is protected. So there's no need to explore any bishop h6 ideas. You just go back with the knight, and the knight on d4 remains as an extra piece. So this order of the moves makes a major difference. Why rook c8 and d5 idea doesn't quite work. Right. So he played a6. And you know, I made it only, I mean not the only, but quite a serious inaccuracy here. I blitzed out queen d3, because this was the original idea, to stop the b5 push. And when I played queen d3, I started to wonder, why exactly did I play queen d3? Because b5 is not a threat. So queen d2 is just good enough. Protected against b5, the knight on c3 is protected. And whatever black does next, let's say he plays something like knight c6, I just need to watch out from knight e4 and b5. So if I'm happy with a slightly better position, I can just, I guess, castle. He could play knight e4, b5, and try to go for some kind of a disposition. Oh, okay, maybe there's rook c4, by the way. I think this idea was working with the queen on d3. There you go. I mixed it up myself, even if I'm sort of an expert in this line. But if he really insists on pushing this b5, I can already take on c6. Let's say queen c6. Now I get this position which I want. I want to play a4. I want to, this knight on c5 will be easier to handle. Just alone one knight, I can play always rook b1 and focus on the kingside attack. And if he takes with a b pawn, yeah, then he loses a lot of dynamics, and I just focus on the kingside attack. This, etc. And at least according to the engines, black is not equalizing. So that's why this rook f8 was not very accurate. Anyway, I play queen d3 automatically, and knight c6, short castle. And then I remembered, wait a second, I already had such a game. And I was playing in last October, November, I don't remember. It was Puhkajärve handicap tournament in Estonia, and one of the leading Estonian grandmasters played against me very quickly b5. And I was genuinely surprised that you couldn't do that. Because after b5, c takes on b5, knight e5, queen d2, I need to guard the knight on c3, and black plays d5, which is quite a typical gambit idea, but still, I was under the impression that it can never work. And now a lot depends. Can I include f4? Which would be a very nice counterattack with the idea that f4 attacks the knight, knight g4, I play e5, I close the position, I solidify my chances in the center, and I keep my extra pawn. It's a very reasonable idea. But the problem is the very powerful rook c3. I cannot take on e5. Knight e4 attacks the queen, defends the rook. And if I take it, knight e4, the queen is under attack. And knight g4. And even without calculating this any further, it already starts to appear that the black has amazing compensation. These knights, e4, g4, bishop on g7, queen a7, something here, something e5. You know, I think this will be a major problem for white to survive this. So e5 is the strongest move, and I think white already needs to sell something back in order to survive this. Otherwise, let's say f takes, bishop e5, something is hanging here, you can easily find a way to lose this very fast. So white already has to give up the queen. So that might be just one sample line how to do a helpmate. So, okay, d5, I remember this, that this was the possibility for black. And after knight e5, e takes on d5, a takes on b5, black is very close to equalize the game. So the best move is rook d1, queen d5, queen e2, attacking the queen on d5 with some discovered attacks. So black has to sacrifice the pawn once more. And then, I'm not sure if this position is in the end equalizing or not, but definitely it feels that black is very dynamic. He has very active pieces, the bishop on g7, knight c6, queen e6, really well positioned pieces. So I would imagine that with the proper play, probably black is making a draw here. So that was because I played this early queen d3. Now you see, right? This queen d3 was a part of initiating this sequence of b5, knight e5, and e5. So there you go. One small minor difference. Queen d2 wouldn't allow all of this. Because queen d2, knight c6, I can take it. Or I can even go for this position. Although after short castle, he can take and push b5. Yeah, probably I have to take on c6. So what happened in the game? I played queen d3. He played knight c6. I played short castle. He played queen d8. And queen d8 is one of the typical ideas of the Maroczy Bind from the black's perspective, because black wants to play knight e7, maybe knight c5, but in general the idea is to twice take on d4 and play queen b6. That's the only idea really. Or maybe also, as in addition, black is thinking about queen a5 ideas, activate the queen, maybe here, and try to be very creative, although this Maroczy Bind structure clearly limits black's piece activity. So I thought here that rook c1 makes sense, and it does make sense. I need to watch out for any b5 ideas. Once again, something like knight e4, bishop d4, b5, always need to watch out, but I can just snatch the pawn for free. So white cannot really show anything. I'm sorry, black cannot really show anything for the given pawn. He played knight e7. And now, now I made probably an error in judgment. I should have knew that I have to play knight c6, because this is one of the common themes of the entire approach. I have to ask this very big decision for black to make, because once again, if he takes with the rook, he loses any kind of activity with b5, and I'm very happily playing a4. Let's say a4, knight c5, hello there, queen c2, something like, I'm not sure, maybe knight e6. It's difficult to understand what exactly black is supposed to do. And I'm just attacking the king side. It's a free roll, so to speak, a free roll. Just attacking the king side, and there's no b5. I mean, at least not right away. I can remove the queen, make sure there's no b5. A takes, knight b5, unless, of course, black is ready to give up the bishop on c3. And of course, if black takes on c6 with a pawn, it removes the b5 active idea. And now I could just focus on the kingside attack. f4, rook e1, f5, e5, and maybe h4, h5 at some point, create more targets. It's a very pleasant to play, because black's best chance is just here, trying to push to the pawn on b3. So black is normally playing something like c5 and trying to put the knight on d4, but even if he managed to do that, so what? The knight remains on d4, right? This is Anti-Najdorf though. What I did, I play 95. You know, I just got this weird feeling that 95 cannot be so great, but it at least poses for my opponent a lot of practical problems. Why is this? Because he needs to calculate many things. Knight c5, 94, 95, 95 right away. He needs to calculate e6. He needs to calculate what is going to happen after e6. And after e6, I wanted to take on c6 right now. Because after b takes c6, I go back and I just established a weakness on d6. This is a provocation. And then again, think about moves like f4, f5, or maybe just try to push the pawn on d6 with simple rook d1. It's very pleasant to play with white. And again, if he doesn't take it, he takes rook c6. I thought I'm going to play knight b4, attack the rook, something like rook c7. I wasn't sure if I even need to take this pawn, because after queen d6, bishop e5, maybe he suddenly becomes very active, although the engine says there's nothing. I thought I can at least play queen d2. This is my idea. Queen d2, rearrange the pieces, put the knight on d3, and he has this weakness on d6 to suffer for a very, very long time. And this is also the reason why he didn't play it, why he didn't play e6. So in the end, he took it. I took it. He took it once more. And it's quite curious that both of us, we did not see physically b5. I'm not sure why. I must have hallucinated something. I must have thought that this move, for whatever reason, is impossible, because he has so passive pieces here. The point is, after c takes, a takes, rook c8, he can capture with this rook. Maybe I still have some minor chances here, because this knight on d5 is annoying. e6 creates some weaknesses. On d6, something like a4. Takes, takes, put the rook in a1, and just push forward the pawn. Then again, black is pretty active. Something like knight e5 or rook c6. Could be very difficult for black to lose this. Anyway, both of us, we missed this moment. He played e6. And after the game, he said he didn't properly evaluate the strength of knight e3. Because now knight e3, not c3, but knight e3. It guards the c4 square. It's ready to go to g4. It's ready to push for the pawns. And it also allows the opportunity to escape the queen trade. So I can even consider more like queen d2. I mean, why not? And this is one of the ideas why black plays all this sequence, right? He plays knight e7. He wants to play knight e4, bishop d4, queen b6, straight queens, and then hold it in the endgame. But here, it sort of doesn't work. But of course, with the pawn on d6 being so weak, I can switch to rook d1, trade queens, and just try to go after the pawn on d6. Anyway, rook c6 was a fine move. I played rook d1 because the c file is done. There's nothing I can do about it. He played b5. I played rook f2. And I was under such an impression that I'm much better here. That is my belief. I mean, okay, let's not exaggerate. I wasn't sure really how much better I was, but I had a feeling that, I mean, definitely better. Knight c4 is a move, threatening the pawn on d6, rook f to d2 is a move. And maybe he also had this feeling because he lost the game threat in a couple of moves. The correct move for him was to play queen f6. And I think what I hallucinated, that after rook d2, he has moved knight e5. And now suddenly he's very active. And I don't get to the pawn on d6, I'm not getting the pawn on b5, and he has his own ideas at the king side. And if I take on f6, and now try to get to the pawn on d6, black takes on c4, and pushes d5. It's just equal. And I didn't see this at all. But okay, I mean, to be honest, I tell you honestly, this knight e5 idea wasn't really great. So it's not like I'm going to try it again for this game. Okay, I tried it. I got my point, but it's not like I'm going to try to do it again. So rook c6, b5, and he made a mistake. He played queen b6. And why this is a mistake? It might seem the same, queen b6, queen f6, and queen b6 is actually closer to the pawn. Suddenly, he cannot play knight e5, and that's all the difference. Because after knight e5, I just trade the queens, and the pawn on d6 is under attack. He made another mistake. He played rook d8. He should have acknowledged the mistake and went queen c7, but after f4, it's already becoming quite apparent that I'm enjoying a very good space advantage. e5 is a threat. Knight g4, knight h6 might be a threat. And I have this very annoying pressure on the weak pawn on d6. So they do say that mistakes come in pairs, right? You make one mistake, and the second mistake is about to follow very shortly. So here I was able to come up with an amazing sequence. Queen b6. So I'm threatening to take it. Knight b6. My initial idea was to play c takes on b5 and go after the pawn on b5. But after knight c8, black passively defends it, and from my experience, this could be very difficult to win. Or even rook c5, I'm not sure. And this weakness on d6 is well protected. He's always going to find a way to activate his pieces, and I thought, it's not enough. But I found an even better move, which is c5. I was very proud of it. And now after c5, the entire point is he cannot take it. The rook is under attack. If he takes with the rook, he's about to drop the pawn on a6 because the knight on b6 is under attack. And rook b8 changes nothing. I give a check, and I still go rook d6. And this should be winning because this is just one check. King f2. There's no more checks on c2 because the knight on e3 protects it. I'm just going to take it. I'm going to organize some attack at the 7th rank. Pass pawn. Should be winning. So that's why he couldn't do it. And he had to play knight c8. Now the pawn on c5 is under attack because the pawn on d6 is protected. b4 and king f8. You know, and here I had quite a deep think. I had a belief that the position could be very close to winning because this pin is about to create for black a lot of problems. So I was thinking, could I play knight g4, try to threaten with either knight e5 or knight f6, snatch the pawn on d6, and try to get a lot of space advantage. But in the end, I wasn't sure if something like this is going to be enough because black's idea is to play at some point rook c7 and put the knight on c6. So I do have a very nice control of the dark squares, but is it enough? His own knight on c6 is going to be very active. And maybe he's just going to be in time to organize a counterplay at a file. So that's why I saw all of this, of course, but I wasn't sure. Is this going to be enough? And then I saw a second idea. I saw that I can rearrange the knight to b3. He played king e7, missing another defensive resource. He had to go rook e8 with the idea that I cannot take it because he takes on d6. Takes and takes. So there's no way I can exploit this, but after rook e8, I can play here. I can play here. Now this is a big threat. And after d takes knight c5, now the pawn on a6 is a weakness, despite the fact that we have a very symmetrical position. Black is in a lot of trouble. And after rook d7, e5, king e3, black is going to be fighting this for long, but he's not lost. He's just in a lot of trouble. Mainly because of white's very active pieces. So he didn't find it. He played automatic king e7. And now I had a victory here, which I didn't see. I saw this move, e5. He cannot take it. He cannot take it. This is a pin. I saw this move. And I was thinking that I have to play a4, rook a1, or rook a2, doesn't matter, a5, very nice counterattack, and I'm just not in time to organize any threats. And something like b takes, rook c5, rook a4, I have an outside pass pawn, but this is clearly not winning. I mean, maybe I can try to play it for the win because I have a beautiful blockade. King very quickly joins it, but could be as well not winning. I just didn't understand it, that here's one very nice quiet move, which is rook a1 first. It's all about the order of the moves. The devil is in the details. And now the only difference is that black cannot play a5. I just snatched the pawn. So for example, a5, I take it, rook b7, a4, and that's it. A takes, and I don't know, maybe rook c1, push the pawn. And this is winning. So I didn't pay attention to the sort of the moves. And here after knight a7, a4, now black is never going to be in time to play a5. And he is remaining with his weakness on a6, and white is just winning. Lasker's principle. What's a Lasker's principle? So something like b takes, knight b5, just take it. And this is just winning. Put the king here, push pawns. Put the rooks behind the pawn before opening the file. Yeah, I guess I've been studying 2 modern games. I already forgot some of the older principles of Lasker. And I saw this, but I didn't think of rook a1. So what I did, I continue my idea, put the knight on b3. And you know, here, black had to face a very tough decision. He saw this line. He saw he had to play rook d7. I'm attaching my king closer. Knight a7. He wants to put the knight on c6. I take it, and I win a pawn on a6. Because a5 is knight b7 fork. But he was not very happy about this position. So he saw this, I saw this from the afar, and he is a very strong international master himself. So he decided, maybe I can go for such kind of a position later. Remember these words. So he didn't do it, and he went back, rook c6. My first idea was that, by the way, I can still win with e5, d5, knight e4. And this rook a1 idea, once again, I didn't see it. My first idea was, maybe I need to grab space, f4, g4, put the king closer. And then I thought, okay, but the king f2 cannot be a mistake. He immediately played e5, taking away the d4 square for the knight. King is closer, f6, and rook d5. So one of the tricks in this position is that I'm not supposed to be very forced, playing very forced chess, because it's my opponent who needs to come up with a very difficult defense. For example, if he plays something like king e6, with the idea to play a knight e7, there might be a moment when I could already think about taking on d6 and knight c5 check, and snatch the pawn on a6. Or even I could just ignore it, because king e6 is king e6, knight e7 is not yet a problem, because I can always take on d6, and this is just a fork on d5. So after rook d5, I wanted to gather some information. One of my ideas was to put the rook here, try to wander with the king here, find the right moment to play a4, king a3, and get to this weakness. Because black is pretty much paralyzed. Once again, he plays something like rook c7, rook d7, knight a7. I take many times on d6 and win the pawn on a6 with knight c5. So he thought he can always return to this idea. He played h5, and his idea was to push forward aggressively the pawns. h4 made sense to stop it, because after g5, this pawn is dropping. That's why he needs the pawn on f6. And the h4 effectively stops his advancement of the pawns. And now, one of the most amazing ideas came to my mind in this position. after rook c7, I was thinking maybe he already is ready to give up the pawn. And I thought if I'm going to play a couple of moves like rook d2, king d1, probably he is going to give up the pawn at the right moment. Oh, sorry, not like this. Like d takes. D takes, takes it, knight c5, knight a6, knight e6, f5, and maybe he will try somehow to salvage this position because my king is so far away. I had the suspicion that something like this could happen. And this is where I came up with a very nice concept. You know what the concept is? Space. Space advantage. It suddenly dawned upon me that one of his counterplays, let's say in an endgame, in this endgame, let's say I play rook d2, rook d7, whatever, let me just make a couple of moves. Oh, sorry, not like this. Let's say take it, take it, take it, here, here. Not sure how to do it. One of his ideas will be organizing, pushing for the pawns at the king side. So I thought maybe it's time to be proactive before that happens. So I came up with this idea of f4, and I was so proud of it. Because the idea is get more space at the king side. And if he does whatever he does, let's say rook d7, I can already win a pawn. I can maybe just take it. Take it and snatch the pawn on e5 for free. So it felt that he has to take it. King f3 and king is a piece. He cannot play g5 because he already committed himself to playing h5 earlier. Remember this moment. He played h5. He wanted to play h4, g5, fix his pawns, and this actually gave me easier targets. So that's why I think it's a good idea. Sometimes make not forcing move. Not forcing move, you just include general, normal, good-looking move, and you're waiting for more weaknesses from your opponent because he's going to try to play active, he's going to try to lead an active defense, and maybe his decisions are going to be his downfall. So h5, h4, f4, king f3. So here he decided, okay, it's enough. I mean, this pin is killing me. He decided, I'm ready to give up a pawn. Played rook d7, king f4, I took on c5. You know what happened? I decided I don't need a pawn anymore. Because after rook d7, take it, knight c5, it's an extra pawn. And maybe he was hoping for this position that somehow he holds it, activates the knight, puts it on e5, and this is going to be a very long grind trying to win this. But I realized that my positional gains are far more important than winning this pawn on a6. So I played b takes on c5. And he started to smile at the board. That was pretty funny. I mean, I think he appreciated this idea. And one of the beautiful ideas here, how the game could continue, obviously rook d5, e takes on d5, I'm dominating his position with two connected pawns. So one of his ideas is knight a5, knight c6 is a big threat. Let's say he would play knight a7, knight a5, and king e6. And he seemingly wins the fight for the d5 square. And now there's a very nice shot. Here. He cannot take, the rook is under attack. Here. And black wins. I'm sorry, and white wins. Very nice. So he cannot do that. What can he do? Because king e6 is going to be knight d4. And I won't play knight a5 or knight c6 or knight b7. Hello, Dietford. White king is much more active. Yeah. This is a good moment to remember in these positions that you can also use your king as a piece. Very, very instructive. So my king is much more important, this king, than e7. It's controlling more space. It's more about space advantage. right? So he played in then king e8 to threaten to play knight e7. I play c6. I'm ignoring the pawn on a6. If he played rook d6, I think I was gonna play knight c5. Knight c5, king e7, and knight b7. And again, he's paralyzed. He has to take on d5 and I recapture the pawn. And eventually, these pawns, they're going to decide the fate of the game. These pawns, they don't matter. They don't matter because they're not moving anywhere. My pawns are. I have simply two extra connected far advanced pawns. It's not material equality. I hope you understand that. So he took on d5. Now there was a possibility for one very funny variation. He could have played knight e7. King e4 would be a mistake. I'm losing a pawn. And seemingly there's no way to defend a pawn on d5 because d6 is knight c6. Well, I have c7. Knight e5 is just rook d5 and I promote. If you play rook c8, it's just d6 and killing. And finally, rook d7. And it seems that he is building a blockade. But there's this one great move, rook e1. I want to take on e7 and promote, or just promote right away. So he has to take and d6. And that's it. So this endgame, I didn't even calculate any further. I thought there should be an easy win. Takes, 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 and I should somehow win this. I don't know, maybe something like knight c5, king e4, knight b7. It should be winning. So I didn't check it very closely. And he played knight e6. My first idea was to play rook e1, king f7, and rook e6. With the idea to sacrifice on d6 and push c7, or maybe push even c7. But then again, I thought maybe he's somehow holding it together with some moves like knight e8, and suddenly knight c7 is a problem. So I decided, okay, I need to activate the knight first. This idea might still remain. Rook e1, rook e6, and snatch it. I'm now to knight c4. A final touch of the game. I thought I can just play c7. c7 here and d6. Knight e6, rook d6, he takes here. And I calculated knight a6, rook c4 check, king g3, rook a4. And of course this is winning, but then again I thought I'm going to have to show a very precise technique. So as a well chess educated person, I'm looking for more. And I very quickly understood that my two pawns, they're worth more than a knight, much more. So trading it for a knight like this is probably winning, but it's not the most convincing way. And as soon as I found knight b7, d6, d7 is just killing the game. It instantly forced a resignation. So something like rook c8, d6, d7 is just killing the game. So there you go, you see the power of these pawns, and they're unstoppable. Yeah, something like this. So I think in general it was a very nice game, and you know, after the game I had also a little chat with my opponent. We talked about the game, and we had pretty much the same thoughts. And after the game I was very optimistic that I had played almost a perfect game. And then of course I came home, I made analysis, and I realized it's not a perfect game, not at all. So once again, where were the mistakes? First, inaccuracy, queen d3. Unforced error. There's no need to position the queen on d3 because once again, queen on d3 was meant against knight e5. I played it very quickly because queen d3 is one of the common themes in these positions. So there was no need to test this position. Second mistake which I did is, inaccuracy is knight e5. There is no need to do this, right? Just take on c6, ask black to define his structure, a4, fixed advantage, b takes on c6, there's the king set attack. So this is the second inaccuracy. He took it here, rook c6. There's no advantage for white if black is accurate. Here, this I played quite flawlessly. I was very happy to find this idea of c5. Rook c5, rook d6, the knight on b6 is ganging, the pawn on a6 is ganging. b4. I'm not sure if I can call knight c2 as an accuracy, because Engine really likes this idea to playing for space domination. But then again, I tell you honestly, this idea is so easy for black to find, and I'm not sure what exactly I have at the king set. For example, something like rook h8. Why this should be so great? Maybe it's somehow linked with a4, rook a1. He plays knight a7, and yeah, maybe this is good. I just didn't understand it. So what I played is human. He also made a mistake by not playing rook e8, getting rid of this weakness on d6. Now the third mistake I did, this is actually a mistake, I didn't find a victory with rook a1. Lasker's idea, right? Because I was thinking only about a4 and then rook a1, but the devil is in the details. And all of this from here was pretty decent. Yeah, pretty decent. So d takes, b takes, all of this is the strongest move, ignoring the pawn on a6. So not really ideal game, but still, I think it was a very high level game, and quite happy to have played